and the red and the brown and the yellow, all the colors of people who smile and shake hands and say hello, all the colors, yes, the colors of people who know the true freedom has won. All the colors are bound for the whole world around, cause everyone's under the sun. All the colors are bound for the whole world around, for everyone under the sun.
Good morning and welcome to Thomas Jefferson Unitarian Church. My name's Donna Riebel and I'm a member of the Board of Trustees. Unitarian Universalists respect the sacred texts of all religions. Our congregation includes humanists, Jews, Hindus, and Christians, believers and agnostics, people bringing previous religious connections, and those searching for deeper meaning in their lives. Our goal is to build a community of open hearts, inquiring minds, and helping hands. Wherever you come from, wherever you are, and wherever you might be going, you are welcome here. I have a few announcements today. First of all, the links to the Sunday service and for the coffee chats and the cocktail hour are all on the TJ website, so you don't need to be looking for an email with the links. You can still contribute to the Share the Plate collection for Sweet Evening Breeze by going to the website. And Black Lives Matter signs are available. In October of 2015, TJ voted in support of the Black Lives Matter justice movement, and the Social Justice Committee has yard signs available that can be picked up at TJ for a $25 donation to Louisville Showing Up for Racial Justice, SURGE. The Family Ministry Committee is announcing the Family Circle, a special time every week for families to get together, share our lives, and connect. Our first gathering is today at 12:30 via Zoom. Updated event details and a meeting link were sent out yesterday to the Family Ministry email list and also posted on the TJUC Facebook page. And from the International Justice Committee, the Keep yard sale has been postponed to the spring. Also, please consider staying with us after the service for our Bring Your Own Coffee chats. We'd love to know you better. Thanks.
Good morning. The wine is still bitter. When I was 16, I received a book entitled The Wine is Bitter, written by Milton Eisenhower, brother of Dwight David. It focused on existing economic and social ills in Central America. It described why the region would face changes, either peacefully or revolutionary. Those prophetic words have come to pass. Many American military interventions and natural disasters have forced thousands of Central Americans to our southern border, and this has created a moral dilemma. Today, I would like to reflect first on why there is a flight for life to our borders and what is our moral responsibility to protect those lives. Second, but a far more complicated point, is how our current administration feels justified in its treatment of these individuals. What justifies zero tolerance, migrant processing protocols, separating small children from their parents, or expedited deep removals? These are moral issues. Finally, I would like to focus and confront as to why major segments of our nation allow and support such actions. What does it say about us as a nation today? What does it say about our future? All these ponderous considerations, and with them, there are no easy solutions. While today's reflections will frequently reference our current president, its prime concern is not political, but moral. It examines our country's moral fiber as emanating not only from our president, but also from his advisors. Maintaining a true American identity as a nation is dependent on our readiness to defend and protect our moral integrity. Yes, the wine is still bitter, but maybe more bitter than ever before.
We light a flaming chalice to honor our heritage as Unitarian Universalists and to symbolize the community that we create together, a community that has grown ever more important during these difficult days. So if you have a candle or a chalice handy, please light it wherever you are as we read our chalice lighting words. Children and youth in your homes are warmly invited to act as chalice lighters today. We say together, any flame can carry a message of opposing meanings. It can be a flame that destroys all that it touches, or it can be a flame that gives us hope. We light this flame as one that will guide us, brings us to a greater understanding of our mutual needs. May this flame be one that truly makes us one. And now let's take time to support the work, witness, and wonder of this congregation with our offering. You may do so by visiting the church website and selecting the donate link at the bottom of the home page.
In 1939, the St. Louis, a ship filled with European Jews, sought American refuge from anti-Semitic persecutors. The ship was turned away, first by Cuba and then by the United States. Some of the passages returned to the safety of England. Others landed in France and Holland and eventually were taken to concentration camps and their deaths. This truly was a low point in American history. Since the introduction of slavery in 1619, our country has repeatedly denied human beings their basic human rights. We can easily condemn the past actions of those charged with crimes against humanity, but we must also examine our own actions by not repeating them with similar actions. Our past and current interventions in Central America merit greater scrutiny. Central American history is often neglected in our educational system. It consists of 7 countries with a large variety of languages, from English to Spanish to 26 indigenous Guatemalan languages. With coastal beach areas and volcanic mountain ranges, it suffers from hurricanes, droughts, and floods. Peasants and depressed by first Spanish invaders, American interventions, political opportunists, and today's oppressive drug gangs. Crops have recently failed, and lakes have dried up. Families suffer from hunger and flee north for their lives. Will their fate be similar to that of the passengers of the St. Louis? History, however, does repeat itself. 3 days ago, the United States Supreme Court, by a 7-2 vote, ruled that asylum seekers were not eligible to apply for habeas corpus. This was done on a ruling on the exception of the use of the non-use of habeas corpus out of fear of rebellion or invasion in which public safety may be required. They may therefore be subject to, quote, expedited removal to their country of origin. Habeas corpus was first appeared in English courts in an anti-slavery decision regarding human rights, and later was referenced in the Dred Scott versus Stanford. The Supreme Court then voted again 7-2 and stated, to quote the words of Supreme Court Roger Taney, at the time of the Constitution in 1787, a perpetual and impossible barrier was intended to be erected between the white race and one reduced to slavery. The black people are not included. They were not to be included under the word citizen in the Constitution. As this decision was fortunately changed, only time will tell what might be the ramifications of extending the present court decisions on habeas corpus. Now, let us have a time for silent reflection. The Flight for Life. Unitarian Universalist 7 principles include respect for the inherent worth and dignity of every person, justice, equity, compassion in human actions, and the creation of a world community of peace, liberty, and justice for all. Existing American immigration policies defy these principles. From the Alien and Sedition Act of 1796, our laws have imposed restrictions on many groups of newcomers. First, it was the Africans, then the Irish, then the Asians, the Mexicans, the Japanese, the Muslims, and most recently, Central American Latinos. For all these, their flight for life was one of survival. We cannot undo the wrongs of the past, but perhaps we can correct the evils of the present. For all these people facing their flight for life, our president would have us to believe that they are not the best. People who have a lot of problems, and they're bringing those problems. They're bringing drugs, they're bringing crime, they're rapists, and some, I assume, are good people. But who are they really? Who are they really? They are the impoverished, the peasants first oppressed by the Spaniards, then political opportunists, foreign entrepreneurs, foreign military interventions, and more recently, murderous drug gangs. Their families have suffered from countless US military interventions since 1890. There have been many such illegal actions by the United States government. 8 in Nicaragua, 6 in Honduras, 9 in Panama, 2 in Guatemala, and 1 in El Salvador. Our government has trained their militaries that in turn have annihilated indigenous villages. In one instance, a right-wing military destroyed the village of El Mosato in El Salvador, killing some 1,100 peasants. These government forces have even killed American priests and nuns. The English newspaper, The Guardian, has recently reported that more than 2/3 of the migrants currently fleeing Central America have had family members that have been kidnapped or killed. MS-13 gangs are a reality. I personally have worked with them here in Kentucky to get them removed from one local city. But as bad as they are not a threat to the security of our nation, as our president might imply. He constantly accuses asylum seekers of being gang members, coming in caravans of invaders. However, the reality is something different. Their children have faced death threats, and many have witnessed murders. They are not to be feared. Confronted with death, they have no other choice than their flight for life. The climate and geography of Central America also threatens their survival. The mountainous range abounds with earthquakes. Recently, there was a 7.5 earthquake in central Mexico, with volcanic eruptions, along with hurricanes, floods, and extended droughts. The Guardian newspaper, again, writes that crop yield production losses have measured from 50 to 75% in Guatemala, Honduras, El Salvador, and Nicaragua. People no longer fish in one Guatemalan lake. There are no fish because the drought has eliminated all of the water. Local residents must now flee for life, or face starvation. Again, the president declares that immigrants to be a threat to national security. He disregards the historical facts just mentioned, namely that their current fate may in some large measure be due to our nation's own immoral intervention in their lives. He evokes national security powers and circumvents the will of our Congress. This creates a constitutional conflict as he places his presidency above the law. He thereby claims that he is able to dictate the norms by which asylum seekers are treated. Harvard constitutional law professor Lawrence H. Tribe cites that such actions are a violation of our own Constitution's 5th and 14th Amendments. Unfortunately, his view has been overruled by a recent ruling of the United States Supreme Court. Theologians tell us that immoral laws are no laws at all, and therefore need not be obeyed. In this case, however, we're not dealing with laws, legislation that has been approved by Congress, but rather presidential mandates. By presenting asylum seekers by the derogative phrases already quoted, he denies them their basic right to human dignity that they possess, and the fearful situations that they confront. But now, let us confront and discuss the moral actions of such as imposed. I've recently been bewildered at how the United States and our government can justify such inhumane treatment of these immigrants. I then came across a concept of homo sacer. This is a sociological political theory promoted by Italian theorist Giorgio Agamben. Now, while I realize that Agamben's name might not be a household name, he is the winner of a 2018 Choices Award for an outstanding academic, and this is most unfortunate. Homo sacer traces its roots to Roman law, which denied human rights to anyone not a citizen of the Roman Republic. It held that the sovereign could be beyond the law. Does this not sound familiar? Especially, he could be beyond the law if such actions were declared in the interest of national security. It is not by accident that our present administration skirts around our elected representatives, declaring a state of national security, calling on regular military units to patrol our streets or to militarize our southern borders against, quote, the caravan of invaders. Ultimately, the theory holds that those crossing our borders are stateless beings who place themselves beyond the protection of the law. They thereby basically have no rights. Lawrence Tribe, again, reminds us that our Constitution, even those who are seeking asylum, have rights to due process. Unfortunately, the recent ruling by the Supreme Court would view it contrary to this. Agamben considers stateless persons to be totally subject to the will of the sovereign, who has domination over their status, even their lives. In its extremes, Agamben considers that they might be treated as, quote, non-humans. In his reflection on the imprisoned in Auschwitz, in his writings, remnants of Auschwitz. He refers to the imprisoned as nameless hulks, Muslims, those who are not quite living or dead. According to him, they had no rights, not even to their own life. As stateless beings, they were totally subject to the will of the sovereign. The Jews thereby became stateless persons, stripped of their citizenship prior to being sent to the concentration camps. These are the extremes of the Homo sacer theory. As horrifying as it appears, the defense used by some of the accused at Nuremberg trials used this very defense. The point here is that the use of the Homo sacer format can have ramifications in our own practices as applied by our government's treatment of asylum seekers. It would hold that they have renounced their rights to due process by illegally crossing our borders, and thus are subject to the dictated penalty inflicted on them. Children by the thousands may be permanently separated from their parents or used as deterrents to limit further immigration. It has been estimated that more than 5,000 young children have been separated from their parents in our current immigration, according to our current immigration policies. There is an interesting psychological study of the impact of separation of children at an early age that can be found in the July edition of the Atlantic magazine. Basically, it states that those children that are separated at an early age have some permanent psychological damage to their lives. Adults also may be sent without legal due process to distant private prisons or forced on government-operated planes under the aegis of expedited removal for a return flight to their countries of origin, and there await the fate of the very gangs that they were fleeing. Again, Professor Tribe states, law and justice are not synonymous. Law is a means, justice is an end. To quote him further, he says, in American history, law has at times served to enslave and oppress. Let me repeat that. In American history, law has at times served to enslave and oppress. Our current government appears to be more concerned promoting its own accepted version of legality to the detriment of basic moral principles, even those accepted by the common declarations of the world's nations. It is hardly what we should understand as being a nation of law. The United States does not accept the authority of the International Criminal Court in The Hague. While the treaty establishing this court was signed on December 31st in the year 2000, under President Clinton, President George W. Bush declared that we're no longer going to perform our obligation as a signatory state. Translated, it means the United States is an extraordinary state and will not function under the norms established by international legal authorities. All this brings us back to our third point, the issue of our reflection, that of our morality, our UU principles, Homo sacer, our nation's moral fabric, and the challenge to our very democracy. What are our moral attitudes towards Latinos, African Americans, and other minority groups? The president considered immigrants as a threat to our nation. Unfortunately, there are millions of our citizens who have been convinced that he is right. The real threat to our national security is not simply coming from one man, but rather from a sizable portion of our nation that is willing to neglect our moral responsibilities for a false sense of personal security. Such tolerance, under the pretext of, quote, preserving the common good, is a poor reflection of our moral integrity. The acceptance of the homosexual model, whether consciously or not, reflects our treatment of minority groups as characterized as being of inferior value, as coming from throwaway cultures, as being disposable persons. It implies little respect need to be paid to them, their families, or their children. Fear of the immigrant may serve the political purpose of some factions. It may be used to subtly preserve a way of life, a culture, traditions, or even the English language. It may be used to justify the building of barriers of separation from Muslims, African Americans, Latinos. And an actual wall can be built to cover 1,000 miles of territory. It can be painted black to absorb the heat that might deter people from climbing on it. It may, as one even suggested, be electrified. What is happening to our basic morality as a nation? The most critical issue of our reflection is the role morality plays in the implementation of our immigration policies. As we have noted, there never has been, and certainly there is not now, a series of immigration laws that satisfy our needs, our traditions of diversity, and at the same time, assuring us of protecting basic human rights. We are called to question the morality of administrative policies, the morality of such policies, and even those of the rulings of our Supreme Court. Our history has demonstrated that we have achieved such needed changes either through a regretful civil war or the revocation of the infamous Dred Scott decision. Already, respected political commentators have referred to the current administration as being authoritarian, if not dictatorial. I personally believe that if we lose our moral character, and we are quickly losing it, then we may be subject to living under a dictatorial rule. We are all called as Unitarians in this present moment to be a prophetic voice to the nation through the enactment of our Unitarian principles. We are called to be a nation of law. Hopefully, we will not become a nation governed by the lawless, be they from the right or from the left. But it is not a question of what we have been, but of what we are becoming. Before his untimely passing, Elijah Cummins challenged us by saying, "We can do better." But will we? Let us all hope that we can do that. We have reflected on moral issues with a special focus on immigration. We are mindful that, unfortunately, this is not the only moral issue confronting our country. There is the centuries-old racial problem of racial discrimination, the severe impact of the virus, especially on people of color, inequalities in areas of housing, employment, education, and health services. All these reflect social and moral obligations that have yet to be confronted. As persons committed to fulfill our 7 principles, we are called upon to make a significant impact on our social politic. Ours is a special challenge to become what we have been called to be, a prophetic voice. Finally, we hope that everyone continues to be safe and secure and healthy and using masks. And we hope to see you next week at the same time. Thank you very much.